Everyone's favorite Guru After Dark.
The hell's that first private comment about there in the private chat?
Chris, you don't listen to bars, man.
Way over my head here.
Chris, those were it was the lyrics.
It was verbatim, like what he said.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Prostate check. Colon.
Did you catch that, Justin? Did you catch that?
No. I didn't. I thought somebody was going to have to take a call.
Do you guys enjoy that guitar riff?
Does he even see a GI or what the hell's going on here?
Yeah,
I don't know.
He's 50. That guy's 50 years old, maybe more. And he's talking about his reality. Prostate check and colon cleanse.
I got it. Just needed explained. I got it, though.
All right.
The guitar riff, I think you guys would appreciate. It's got some rock.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, that
one. And here we are, the March edition of.
We try to do this once a month. Yeah, last time broke records. We'll see. This is a Monday. I don't remember what day we went live last time.
It was definitely like a Thursday.
Guru Nation After Dark just spontaneously arises. It's not planned. You know, if we all can do it, we do it. This is the usual crew. Plus Justin. Those that went to SOS got a chance to meet Justin. Justin, you want to introduce yourself? I think everyone else kind of knows who Chris and Robert are by now. If not, I don't know what's going on with you guys, but Justin's a little new. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. Don't know what else there is to say.
Texas Rangers.
In the industry. Yeah, I like the Rangers. I'm from Texas. Big Rangers fan all my life. Been in the clinical research space for going on 18 years now. And Robert and I have known each other for about a decade, working together. We started off at massive CRO and kind of followed each other everywhere, seems like.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of roles did you have during those
18
I
years?
started off as a project associate at PPD, and then CRA, and then worked all through all stages of CRA 1 to principal CRA, and then CTM, and then switched companies, still did the CTM role, then went to project management. Did project management for a few years, and then now I'm a director of clinical ops.
Okay. And what's been your favorite role in that period of time?
Well, that's a tough question because I feel like every role came at a different stage in my life, right? So when I was single and young, the CRA life was incredible. Like just traveling all over the country, racking up points for hotels and airlines and all that. And then as got married and have kids, I started pulling away from the road life and more to the at home life. And each one has had different opportunities and different things that I like about it in each position. But
do you think
really
CRA
like type position?
Oh, sorry. What were you saying?
No, I was just saying I like the position I'm in now. More of a strategic and oversight level position where I'm making a few high value decisions every week or month, as opposed to 1,000
micro decisions,
daily decisions.
Yeah. I get it. Do you think, because you and Robert both kind of similar paths, maybe, and that would make sense how you guys know each other. Thank you for the history. Do you think CRA is a single person's job? I know a few married people doing it, but married with kids. But in your honest opinion, like what do you think about CRA role? Do you think it's a certain type of person at a certain stage in their life? Because it feels like a job everybody wants, and then once they get it, they get stressed out.
Ooh, I go first.
Well, you've been a CRA. Everyone on this panel's actually been CRAs in the past.
Well, not really a traveling CRA, so that's something uniquely different from what we've. But it's not unique to the role, but uniquely different from what you and I've really done. I mean, you've done it more than I have, but
Yeah.
CRA, I think, is built for a young person, right? You have to be young when you start, because
You have to.
you have too many commitments and responsibilities once you're more of age, let's say. Uh, it's more for a person that can handle the role in terms of travel. The travel is really burdensome. If it weren't for the travel, I don't think it's that difficult, honestly. I mean,
But if it wasn't for the travel, I don't think the pay would be that good either.
of course, and that is why they're paid that well, right? Because of the travel. Um, but if you could be local and be a CRA, you're right. I don't think it would pay nearly as much, and I don't think it would be a young person's game either, right? But really, most again, you guys correct me because you have more experience with this, but most sponsors and CROs, they require the the burdensome travel of the younger crowd. You have some experience and are a bit older. Um, they don't make you travel nearly as much, at least to my understanding.
I don't know about that, Chris.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I've had some quintessential CRAs that
quintessential. I like that word.
quintessential, man. I'm telling you, and I mean, well into their 60s.
We top you. We know an 80-year-old.
I mean,
Yeah, but
and
she
look,
doesn't travel. She doesn't
oh
travel.
no,
She's
these
local.
Chris, Dan, these people I'm talking about, these wonderful women, they are, when I tell you, like, top of the game, been doing this 30 years, and refuse to go into any other role. They've been offered CTM, PM, PD
Wow.
position over and over and over. I mean, I would love to say their names because that's how, but actually, you know what? I'm going to get them on the podcast one day, Dan.
Let's do
There
it.
you
Yeah.
go. There you
Now,
go.
will
And,
they go
and
during daylight or after dark? What kind of
they,
people are they?
they are that anytime. Like
Anytime. Okay.
that's how cool. And again, one is based in Florida, and one is based in the Raleigh area. And man, the respect that I have for these two women, I can't even begin to tell you. They are, and they're just sharp. They're still passionate. They're still on top of their game. But I would say they're the exception to the rule, to Chris's point. I mean, you do have to be energized. You do have to have a certain level about you. But, I have had, and Justin, even on your teams, when we were at the CRO side, I mean, you had some CRAs that were, I used to have this
Senior
chiropractor.
CRAs,
Yeah, I mean,
both
literally.
both in title and in age.
Yeah,
And
literally. Yeah.
they were great to work with. They had a wealth of experience that you just don't get because they were monitoring data when it was, you know, paper CRFs. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I started off on, paper CRFs and
Me
paper
too.
stores, and there
That
were
was my
no.
first study. Let me ask you guys controversial because it's after dark. We go a little. We throw a little controversy in here.
I love it.
We have a Siri Academy, and we get asked, and Chris and I always try to give the best possible answers, regardless of how it makes someone feel. And so far, I've been answering everyone no, but the question that keeps coming up a lot is, if you're a new CRA, is there any ageism involved when they're hiring? I told you to get controversial.
Ooh.
I told you.
I have an opinion. I don't have any
Yeah.
facts to,
I mean, this is not written
substantiate it.
down anywhere. It's all
Yeah.
anecdotal. But from your decades of experience, I still think no, but I could be naive. I was called naive, I think, earlier this morning on a live by Chris. So thank you. What do you guys think, though?
I mean, Dan, I'm going to be real.
Yeah, be real. This after dark.
I mean, I would hope the answer was no. But the reality is the answer is probably yes.
And why is that, do you think?
I'll be right back with you. Give me a moment.
What a cliffhanger.
Sorry about that.
Well timed.
He doesn't want to answer it. He got a fuck. Somebody called him.
I'll answer it. I don't know that there is any ageism involved. I mean, I don't know. Well, like, what do you mean? They're not hiring because you're too young, or they're not hiring because
Old,
you're
too
too
old.
old.
Too old, usually. These are the people asking who are like in their 50s and up. Never been a
Have
CRA.
they ever monitored before?
No. So they wanted to take our program and then with the internship and then go on to be a CRC, maybe 2-3 years. And then is it still too late at that point, like realistically, for them to get hired as a CRA? My answer has always been no. But Robert's making me change my mind. I'm not going to lie.
Well, I don't know. I've never been in that position to hire a CRA that was no experience and later in their career. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like, to me, it's always an experience thing. I think people wouldn't bat an eye at a CRA that's older that has
Of course.
20 years
course.
experience monitoring.
The
Like,
context
it'd be insane not to hire them.
the context usually is, so just to add more color, it's usually a RN, kind of tired of bedside nursing. Hey, I have the education for it. I'm in my 50s. I have the medical knowledge. I know that I need a CRC experience first. I'm okay taking a pay cut, be a CRC. By the time I'm realistically ready, let's say I'm 55 or 60, with CRC experience as a RN, is it too late?
Well, I mean, I would say no.
Me too. I always
I
say
mean,
no also.
I wouldn't think that would be a limiting factor. I mean, to say otherwise, maybe we're insinuating that people aren't following the law, right?
Well,
So-
that's what makes it difficult. We're not saying this is what it should be. We're just
Right.
giving our anecdotal opinion on how it actually is based
Right.
on our experiences individually.
I think that experience trumps everything else.
Yeah.
And, depending on the experience that you bring to the table, whether it's, 25 years in a nursing background, if you even if you were like a CRC for 25 years and, your kids are now out of the house and you want to travel.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, see? I don't see.
Why not?
So that makes me more confident with my answers. I think I've been giving reasonably good answers. Chris, you're over there scratching your beard. You got to be thinking hard about this.
So my answer generally is just to give them, because again, like you, I don't know, right? It's what I think their options are, right?
Mhm.
You could, with some companies, encounter possibilities of, you have no experience at this stage in your life. We're not willing to train you or take you on, but that won't be every company. And worst case scenario, you take a lesser position. Worst case scenario. And for many, the lesser position is the desired position, right? Like an in-house CRA or something.
Right. Or a CRC.
Right. Yeah. And at least to get your foot in the door and then show them that you have the skill set to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that several different CROs, especially the larger CROs, will have these CRA schools, or they have different names, in-house CRAs, in-house programs, where they're training the CRAs and then they're, transitioning from an in-house where there's a lot of supervision to a traveling CRA. But I just don't know that they do the training like they used to. I mean, when I got trained originally, I got shipped off 2 weeks to RTP and going in a classroom every day for 2 weeks except for the weekends. And now it's all virtual. And there was a test that I had to pass when I was done. And if I didn't pass that test, they'd give me an opportunity to take it over. But I know that there were some people that didn't pass the test and had to take it again.
Yeah.
And they give you an opportunity to learn it and all that. But at a certain point, if they can't get past that, because that's strenuous, right? I mean, that in and of itself is like is an extended job interview. You go here for 2 weeks and see how you can handle working and managing and studying away from your house. Because if you can't do that, then you really can't do it when you're unsupervised as a CRA going monitoring sites.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what some of those questions were? Like some of the harder questions, if you can recall back to those early days.
No, it was mostly just a skill test of monitoring. They'd give you a fake protocol and a fake source documents, and you have to study it. And then they would intentionally mess up the source to see if you could find it.
Are you talking about the PPD training program?
Well, I'm talking about the CRA training program when I first got trained. Yeah,
Most likely,
CRA.
the PPD one
Yeah.
has the same name as ours. Actually, it's called Siri Academy. Ours is called the
But that
same
was
thing.
a decade ago. I mean, it was 2007 when they were doing that, and then it was all in house. Like now, it's all remote.
I remember that. I had to spend a week or 10 days in the Wilmington office, and they
Yeah.
use CRA assessments. They give you a fake ISF, fake source,
Yeah,
test.
incredible.
Yeah.
It was like I'll tell you at the time, PPD was known for training the industry. Their training program for CRAs was absolutely phenomenal. I don't know what it is today, but I don't see the quality of CRAs today as we did 10 years ago.
Why do you think? Do you think that's because?
Wait,
And
wait.
Robert, we won't let you get off the ageism question, but
I was hoping you would forget about that.
But Chris wanted to say something first.
I was
Chris,
just going to say, I don't think you see the quality in anything like you used to. That's my personal opinion. I think it's all related.
now we just sound like a bunch of old guys talking. Back in my day.
I'm almost certain that's true.
Do you think that's because, and we're going to get back to Robert, but do you think that's because there's been such a demand since, when was this, Justin, that you took this like
2007.
2007? Since then, after the Great Recession, there's been a demand in research, and then COVID just quadrupled it, insane levels that we're still actually reeling from. Maybe there's a slight correction now, but do you think that the demand created incentives for shortcuts just to staff people quicker, or what do you think the reason for that is? Like the lack of training, as good as it was, at least in 07. Because you're not the first time. This is not the first time I heard this, and you're not the first person I've heard this from. This seems to be a theme from a lot of the old school people who started out as CRAs.
Well, I think maybe it's cost driven, right? So if you're training somebody that's brand new, then that's never monitored a day in their life, maybe don't have a nursing background, but have like a clinical background in something, then it makes sense to send them off for 2 weeks to do an intensive training. But if you've got, but they did the same training for somebody with 5 years training, 5 years experience as a CRA. So, I mean, it's a cost benefit. If you have somebody that's been in the industry for a while, why spend the money to send them away for 2 weeks to train them when you can just do a quick, clef test basically, to see where they are. But I don't know. I know that they switched it. I think it was like in 2012. I can't remember the exact date when they switched, but it went for more of a hybrid. So you spend a week and then the next week is remote. And then I don't know if it's all remote now. It wouldn't surprise me if everything is remote now.
Yeah. And some of the monitoring visits are remote. I would think the shadowing is still on site. I can't remember the last time we had a CRA shadow one of our sites. It's been a while. Robert, we'll get to your thoughts on this, but is someone too old to be a CRA? Let me give you the context. An RN, let's say they're in their mid-50s, bedside nursing all her life, doesn't want to do it anymore, is willing to take our Siri Academy, is willing to take a massive pay cut to be a CRC, but she's asking, hey, 2 years of being a CRC, maybe 3, now I'm going to be pushing 60. Is it too late to be a CRA? Realistically, not what you think, what the industry has done according to your experiences, because we all agree that's wrong.
Yeah,
But
I mean, what I think and the reality is two different situations. Yeah, I just want to make that like super, super clear.
yeah, super clear.
Um, I do think that certain organizations, maybe not the top 10, if you find a niche CRO that's, specialty, smaller, they're going to heavily rely or lean on the fact that you bring a lot to the table in terms of your background, for whoever this person may be. But, in my humble opinion, and, I feel terrible even saying this, I just don't, I don't see the larger CROs jumping at the bit to hire somebody that you just described, unfortunately.
Is it because, next question for both you and Justin, really, because me and
Well,
Chris don't have that much. Or go ahead, Chris.
so I just want to add on to what Robert was just saying. So I've never really put a whole lot of thought into this question. And if I were in HR, my thought process on whether or not I want to hire this person would be twofold, right? What's my ROI and how long will this person stay with us, right? So, but that would be a question for everybody. So what is the average timeline that most CRAs stay with a company? Because if it's only say 5 years, right? They're not too old, right? Because if they can do the job now, you can expect they'll be able to do it in 4 years, right? So the consideration here on whether or not to hire somebody of older age would be, do I expect them to be around for the duration of what I would expect any employee to be around for? And if that's 20
Nowadays,
years,
it's like 2 years. Nobody.
that's what I'm thinking. That's why I put the little thought into this. And if your average CRA is sticking around for 2 years, it doesn't matter what their age is.
Right. Good point. And this is what I wrote down so I don't forget. Is it because the new entrant CRAs, the industry standard is to work them, like work them really hard,
Yep. 70% travel.
Are
like
you
give
implying that
the
young
junior
people don't
CRA.
know
Guys,
the value of hard work?
What was that?
Are you implying that young people don't know the value of hard work?
I'm implying young or old. These CROs, they're like, okay, you're a junior CRA, you're gonna be 80% travel because we have more senior ones wanting to travel less. Because to Chris's point, we want to keep them longer than 2 years.
Facts.
Yeah, but Dan, you know what? I mean, Justin was a principal CRA. I was a senior CRA when we were working together at PPD. I mean, again, things might have changed. They probably did, but we travel. I mean, we were on the road. If I was home 9 days a month, that'd be impressive.
Yeah,
And
that'd be a victory, right?
it'd be a victory. You know what I mean? So, I mean, there were times where I'd wake up and have no idea what state I was in. I'm like, where am I? Like, what time
At that
zone?
point, do you even need a home? I mean, this was before Airbnb, right? Like,
I mean, that's the whole thing, So like you're paying for a home, your vehicle, everything in between, and you're just on the road, 21 out of 30 days a month. And really, sometimes I would travel on Sundays.
So I got a
Wow.
really, really quick funny story I got to share. So the first site Dan and I owned together, the CRA was in for an interim monitoring visit, and the coordinator comes to me and says, "Hey, this CRA is bawling. I mean, she's been crying for half an hour."
Oh yeah.
And I was like, "What? Seriously?" And she's like, "Yeah, you want to go see what's wrong with her?" It's like, "Well, just go ask her." And she's like, no, I can't do it. It's like, oh, fine. So I go back there and I started talking with the CRA, and she's like, yeah, they just told me I haven't been home for 8 days, and they just gave me 2 more sites I have to go see before I can go home. So I won't be home for a total of 15 days.
Yeah.
And she was like, my family's asking me, have I been kidnapped? Have I been taken hostage? She's like, I just don't know if I can do this job. And she was probably, if I had to guess, like mid-20s, 24, 25, 26.
Wow.
And I was just thinking at the time, it's like, yeah, that's the life. I mean, when you initially start
Wait,
out,
is this the same one? Because I met one that cried too, and she was in her mid-30s, I think. See, this is
no,
a common thing, everybody. Like CRAs, they get worked a lot. Speaking of which, Ashley jumped into a great
Ashley loves
conversation.
I
being a
know.
CRA.
Ashley Margot,
Hello,
here's
Ashley.
What's up, Sebastian? I'm joking. What's up, Robert?
Those are the
Yeah, I get
SOS
what you're
secrets.
talking
that's the
Hey,
alter ego.
listen, you're gonna have to come to SOS number 2 to meet Sebastian.
about.
Otherwise,
Yes, he is interesting. Very interesting. You
very
got to meet
interesting.
him.
Yep,
Sebastian comes out after dark.
Yeah,
this is true. This is
Sebastian after dark. Well, I'm hoping
true.
to plan a really good pre and after party, so it might be good. It'll be good. But yeah, I've heard stories of that. I try to tell, the Siri Academy, but also people that ask me questions about the CRA role. I try to be brutally honest. I feel like there's just there's little guys that people focus on the fact that okay, we make so much money and you get to travel and free points and all this stuff, but really it's not all glamorous, and you have to really be into what you do to be comfortable with what's going to be requested of you, especially if you are starting off and you think you're getting paid really well, but when you work for, let's say, a CRO that really like treats you like a workhorse, because there is some that are out there like that. I feel you kind of you get put in this place where it's just you want this career, but it's also, do I really want this particular lifestyle, right? So as long as you're building on your skills, I think the first year and really learning as much as you can, I feel like that's only a small window if you maneuver well after that.
Do you think the CROs are doing a better job of trying to retain their CRAs? And so here's an anecdote from my I have two studies right now that are using that functional service provider model. So these are big pharma and huge CROs, but I noticed the quality of these CRAs are like super good compared to the norm, like the standard. But they give them the opportunity. Hey, half of the time we get like a remote visit, the other half is an in-person visit.
Hmm.
So I feel like they're doing whatever they can to cut down their travel. Do you think there's more of that, and is it working?
I think some places, like where I used to work before I maneuvered out of there, I know that they were listening to their employees and trying to make it more accommodating where they give you regional travel, right? So that's good. I mean, because you could literally, I was in Austin, Texas, I could travel just to the sites there in Austin, Texas, or maybe in Waco or whatever, to where it can ensure that if I was willing to do the drive, I'd get home that same night, right? So that's beneficial. What I don't think is good is, I think to meet with the standards that are needed to bring in new novice people, is they're doing in-house trainings. And I feel like the in-house trainings, they're, because it's so new to them and that's not what they were necessarily doing in the past. I feel like the downside of that is, you're trying to bring in so many people at once, or taking, I don't know how many cohorts at a time. And I feel that this is partially why, at least a little after the COVID period, you started to hear like, oh, my RSM or my CRA really wasn't that great, or like, doesn't feel like they're able to answer my questions right away, this or that. Because I feel like there's not a lot of one-on-one real direct time. I feel it's just a bunch of modules that you're going through, and I hate modules personally. When you do the onboarding and you have to do like 180 some modules in a span of a month and a half and hope that you retain it, that is even before you get into your actual study training. And this is obviously at a bigger global CRO. I don't know how the smaller ones do it, but it's just not, it's not doable. It's just, you're literally already flooding somebody with stress before they even get to the main part. And so, yeah.
This is a cool little reunion. There's all three of you, Ashley, Justin, and Robert, PPD alumni.
I was just going to
Oh,
ask, Does PPD still have a good training program, Ashley?
Well, I will say I didn't go through specifically their CRA. They had just created it, and I slipped in right before they started putting cohorts through there. So I don't know. I do know that what I do love about PPD, and I will, regardless of how things ended, I will say that the way that they keep their employees constantly up to par with everything. They have these groups that every month. They allow you to learn something and then train people or present on it. Pretty much repetition every month. You have that opportunity, and it's on the tools to the workload to this or to that. And oh, hey, Alicia, yeah. So yeah, it's really good. I like it. But as far as the academy goes, I never went through it, so I don't know. Their academy is fairly new.
After dark sessions are the best.
Yeah, LinkedIn user. Thank you. Identify yourself, LinkedIn user.
Identify yourself. I bet you it's Dr. Fox.
No, Fox
That's
is
always
asleep.
the same bet you make. You
Yeah.
always
Fox-
say that.
I'll take the under on this one.
Hey,
Fox is
listen,
asleep. I
I
know
will
Fox's bedtime.
I will bet a hat.
Okay, I'll win another
Oh.
hat.
Reveal thyself.
I wear
Reveal
seven.
thyself.
I wear 7 1/8. I'll take the under that it's not Fox.
Yeah, Robert and I have heard that a number of times recently, Dan. Thank you very much. I have that memorized at this point. But I'll take that bet too. I'll take a hat bet.
Actually, I don't want the hat. I want the shirt. I'll do
You want the shirt?
I'll get you a shirt.
Both.
LinkedIn
both.
user, come on! I'm getting a hat out of this. Tell me who you are. Tell me you're not Fox.
Wait, what? I got a hat too.
No,
You get
I
two
was the
hats,
first one.
Robert.
I was the first one to accept the bet, man.
Fine.
You get the RFK one.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a tough one for me to win, so I got to get one back.
It's a stretch.
Did I miss anything interesting before?
Yes, just a little ageism convo.
Ageism.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's
Nothing
get your
you have to
take.
worry about, Ashley.
Yeah, no, I want to hear it. Yeah.
Well, we get asked this all the time. This is not our opinion. This is our. So CRA students, let's say it's a nurse, RN, bedside nursing. She's in her mid-50s.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, hey, you know what? I want to do your CRA Academy. I know from your videos you told me I got to be a CRC for 2 or 3 years, and then I'll be a CRA. I'll be pushing 60. Is it too late for me to be a CRA? Like, not what's right. They're not asking for, like, the corporate speak answer. They're asking for, like, is there some under discussed issue where they won't hire me because I'm too old to be a entry level?
I think that's more common in the clinical industry. At a certain age, they start to not take you. And I say this because my mother and all my aunts, they're RNs, and I have more family in healthcare, and I was in there for about, I think, 11 to 13 years. And so that's very common. Unless you've been situated somewhere for a while, then no, they won't, but for you to be jumping around, not so much. I think that if you were like a clinical educator coming into pharmaceuticals, yes, but I feel like in research, because there's such I don't know if scrutiny is the right word, but focus on the fact that you need experience. I feel like there's not that much experience out there, and I feel like if somebody comes in with a license and an aspect for of close enough to research, where you talk about maybe, like, let's say a clinical registered nurse who's done compliance for X amount of years, it's pretty much the exact same thing as monitoring. It's just you have that little maybe different aspect of how you read the protocol, but ultimately SOPs, processes, all those kinds of things. So I feel like there's a better jump, but it comes down to the core basics. For me, I feel like you need to make sure you're able to just be descriptive on your resume with that. You're giving very good transferable skill sets in that interview so that they feel the confidence, but also can say, yeah, you know what, this person's going to be able to transition easily. And I don't think that, say they wouldn't take you as a CRA right away, but that you would get the job as a CRC. I don't feel that you even need to be in a CRC position for more than 6 months to a year.
6 months. Wow.
Yeah. Well, because I think that if you are maneuvering right, and again, you're good with the language, you have an understanding, and after getting some exposure, especially if somebody as an RN that's had that many years, they're going to know right away if they can do that job or not, right? And if they can, again, they'll be able to talk their way through the process. They'll be able to, again, correlate the skill set and comes down to the sponsor or whoever is going to be taking them in as a CRA1. But I don't think it needs to wait 2 or 3 years. I feel, there's so many people are coming in with no clinical experience and no research experience that if they get somebody that has a license, that has a whole bunch of clinical, there's more leeway there. But again, it comes down to the person and how well they can sell that, in my opinion.
Robert,
enough.
Justin.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, but I just think it's there's more challenges ahead for that person that was described.
Mhm.
Trying to break into a larger organization, there may be. I mean, it's just I don't know. It's not impossible. I mean, again, this is just my opinion, right? I don't know. I think that it's just I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I
I
want to be
definitely not. I
careful.
definitely don't think at a CRO. I mean, at a sponsor. I feel at a CRO, and I say this because I worked with people that started to come in. I even mentored people at a CRO. Some people I do not know how they made it in, to be quite honest, because they had
I do.
no background. There was no being able to simulate from one role to the next. Like you're just kind of like really. And I've worked with RNs or like they can talk in depth about XYZ for different therapeutic areas. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
speak that out and try to understand the foundation of research, find that correlation.
You're not
Once you do that,
bullshitting a RN
yeah,
CRA.
that's what I'm saying. And that's what I mean. Because like, so I feel like definitely not sponsor level, but I feel CRO, there's a possibility you'll be competitive-ish, not compared to an international medical graduate student, I think. But that's solely on the basis of like licensing, and the bottleneck is huge. But that when you look at the bottleneck, I feel like 75-80% is people that coming from a whole other industry that have no licensing, no exposure in any direction clinical. So I feel like toppling over that, they have a much better chance. But all the other things that kind of come in the way of that.
Right, but
So
if we talk about right now with the talent pool,
Oh, no.
you
Right
know,
now,
tough.
yes, because right now there's even CRAs that have been let go that are like looking, but again, they're
Exactly.
also being particular too. I honestly feel every time that I've switched, I feel like I switched in right before there's a massive wave of craziness. I've always felt lucky in that sense. Seriously. But yeah, it's the pool right now I think is really really tough out there, especially where you're hearing a lot of sponsors and CROs are doing where they're leaving the job applications out and they're there for months and months and months. They're not closing them.
Yeah.
So they're just like picking up these candidates and cold
Yeah. And they're
calling
in the final stages of hiring the candidate when you reach out to the recruiter. And there's like, oh no, we have 2 people. They're finalizing. And why is it still up? Oh, just
just
just in case,
cause. Yeah. Yeah. No.
so you can pad your resume block.
Mm-hmm. That's why when I've had some people reach out to me, they're like, "Hey, I'm a CRA too. I want to leave. What do you think?" The way I've always worked is, you pretty much, maintain as much as you can until something's for sure for you, because a lot of things can happen. There's a lot I feel in this industry right now that feels very shaky, and I just don't think it's personally. I don't feel like it's a good space right now to throw your
I
hat in
think
and feel ballsy.
you think it was oversaturated with like bodies, like CRAs, because you know, not somebody could be a CRA1 or a senior CRA, and you're a senior CRA at one CRO and a senior CRA at the other CRO. They're not equal in a
Oh
lot
no.
of cases.
Uh-uh.
And if like these smaller CROs, they don't. Again, I'm going back to just my experience with at PPD when I trained there. They were known for training the industry,
Hmm.
and they wanted to get away from that, I guess. And then we have a shortage of quality, talented CRAs.
Hmm.
Now, maybe that's not the case anymore. But it's funny that Dan, when you asked this question, I thought you were going a totally different way. I wouldn't have thought that hiring an experienced RN would be a holdup as a CRA. Like if they've done the CRA training and all that, and it could be more of a role that they would look at somebody out of college, because it would be curious to Chris, you talked about turnover. Like how long are they going to stay there? I wonder if there's any data analysts out there that have done the review and say, well, if we hire within this range age group, they tend to leave a lot sooner than this age group. And I would think that the older age group would stick around longer than the younger group,
It's a good
because
point.
they're less likely to put up, the younger group doesn't want to put up with the 13, 14-hour days.
Right. It's a good
Maybe
point.
they do.
Also,
I don't know.
the younger group is still busy, trying to find themselves and all this other stuff. Whereas the more mature group is, hey, I know what I want to do, and I want to do less jumping around possibly the rest of my career. So that's actually a really good point,
That's
Justin.
funny that you mentioned, Justin. I actually, when I was PPD, in my study alone, I worked with 2 senior CRAs, and one of them was amazing, and I learned so much from her, and I'll never forget her. But the other senior CRA, I do not know how that individual. I mean, it was crazy. I was always picking up after that person all the time. It was insane till finally I got smart about it and I started keeping a trail, because at some point I was just like, it's gonna land on me, And so yeah, I mean there's definitely 2 different sides to that.
Well, and but I have a theory about that. I think a lot of those kind of CRAs are the ones that go into a CRO and they jump ship after about a year and a half or 2 years, and then go get more money somewhere else, and they don't care.
Mhm.
Their idea of monitoring is just checking boxes in the CRF.
Mhm.
Like they're not really comparing the source against the source to make sure it makes sense before they look at the CRF. And I can't tell you how many CRAs I went behind when I was a CRA and had to clean up sites because they did such a terrible job. Like I was almost typecast as that CRA. I trained and mentored other CRAs when I was at PPD, and like I would, like with newer CRAs, they always struggled at first, because I feel like, and I did the same thing when I was a brand new CRA. You try to overcompensate with your lack of experience with your energy, so you schedule a bunch of on-site visits and you just knock them out real quick, and you get all the data reviewed and all that, and then all of a sudden you're behind on your reports, you're behind on all this other stuff, and instead of trying to pace yourself.
Mhm.
And now I don't think the industry really allows you that time to pace yourself, because everything is always urgent, needs to be done yesterday. And I think that's one of the challenges that you have with the newer CRAs coming in. It's a really it's not easy these days.
Mhm. I think that also something, I think I told you this, Dan, a while back, was that coming into COVID, we needed this surplus of CRAs and remote site monitors, and so we kind of just upcharged so many, and I mean I was one of them, and through those groups, those cohorts, I feel there was definitely a good chunk of people that shouldn't have, I guess, made it through the line, you know what I mean? And they did. And so if we're talking about like 3 years later, 4 years later, and these individuals are now moving up and they're training the ones below them. And so I feel like the level of consistency and just overall efficiency and quality of the work is, you know, I guess you could say, having some issues. There's dwindling and stuff. I do feel that when like the smaller CROs are not necessarily experiencing that as much, because there's a lot more focus on the quality, right? You have you have your higher ups having a closer view and asking direct questions, as opposed to questions just trickling down from a senior CRA who's too busy themselves to really look over your work, right? At a bigger CRO. So
Yeah,
um,
Ashley, I think the big issue here is there's a really misalignment in incentives between sponsors, CRO, and especially the CRAs. The CRAs, coming from a sponsor perspective, Justin and I obviously have experience with, different CROs, and we see the resources assigned to our projects. And this is not, please don't make any assumptions for anybody listening. I'm not specifying any specific CRO, but what I will tell you is the quality and the just industry standards you would expect of just putting together a deliverable, right? Your confirmation letter, your follow-up letter, and your trip report, and what you're supposed to accomplish minimally on site. Most CRAs, when you talk to them from a sponsor perspective to ensure that they're qualified to monitor your trial, which you're ultimately responsible for as a sponsor, miss the mark. They do not know what Alcoa Plus means. And so, Dan, when you made that video the other day, I don't know if it was last
I
week or
saw
what,
that. You loved it.
I loved it. I'm like, louder for those in the back. And look, it's not just the CRAs. Justin can vouch for me. I'm telling you, there are clinical leads, project managers, and project directors who have no idea and cannot recite Alcoa CCEA. Alcoa
So what's important for them then?
Well, I mean, what do you mean? I'm just talking about the foundation. So again, I'll just use the analogy. If you've never been a soldier, how can you be the general? So what we have now is a bunch of generals, aka project managers, project directors, who have no clue how CRAs are supposed to function, how sites function, and yet they're overseeing these functional stakeholders. And then you have clinical leads who potentially were never, maybe they were an in-house CRA, a central data analyst, maybe a central monitoring associate, who also never were a traveling CRA. So how can you oversee this team and understand expectations? And when your number one deliverable as a CRA is that sandwich, right? That confirmation letter, trip report, follow-up letter. And when you read the content of these trip reports these days compared to when Justin and I were back in the day, it was so scrutinized. And even when I was at, PRA after PPD.
So how's that possible though? Like how, because I'm hearing this over and over. Back when you were doing it, there were less of you, right? And there was same amount of work. You guys probably worked more than these CRAs today. So how's it possible that you put in more work and better quality than today's average, or I guess standard?
It's to Justin's point, it's that trickle down effect, right? These inept CRAs, and even to Ashley's point, that are falling through the cracks, making it in during COVID. They now have 3 years on their resume. Wow. And they're getting gobbled up. Let me give you a great example. So I was a visit leader at PRA, and I was tasked with routine performance visits, and I was also tasked with sign-off visits. So very often I would be assigned a junior CRA who would, see one, do one, and then I would either sign them off to independently conduct SIVs, site qualification visits, independently do IMVs, whatever it was, right? And there was one gal who I, went out with. She was on my team, and I just knew this job was not for her. It just wasn't. I called up her line manager. I said, listen, here's some areas of focus that we need to work on before we even think about a sign-off visit. And the line manager was completely adamant about, no, Robert, she's going to do the SIV with you. Let her take the reins. And if anything goes south, you just jump in and take over. Needless to say, make a long story short, what happened during the SIV, I'm getting the death stare. Imagine Dr. Smith, your PI, Dan, at Yuma Clinical Trials, just turning over and giving a cross-armed like this, and just daggers are coming out of his eyes, like, do something. I had to quickly intervene, finish the SIV, and I wrote a very long report, and I did not sign this CRA off. Here's the story, though, okay? I went and reviewed this, my report with the line manager of this particular CRA. They gave her another 3 months of monkey see, monkey do. Okay. And an elderly CTM went and took her out on a sign-off visit 3 months later, which nobody else got 3 months. Nobody.
Wow.
Unheard of, right? And signed her off to independently monitor. And I told the line manager, I said, this line of work is not for her. Like it's just not going to be her. It's a liability, not an asset. Sure enough, gets terminated from the company. Of course, I was not involved in that discussion because it wasn't any of my business, and HR can't disclose the reason for separation. But my point is this: 2 weeks later, LinkedIn update, hired as, so she was a CRA1, mind you, this whole time, right? So 6 to 8 months, CRA1 title, never was signed off, couldn't ever perform a single visit independently, but she had the title. She was hired at Syneos, I'm just gonna say it like that, as a CRA level 2 with probably a pay raise.
Yeah.
And now
this
she's
is the
on
problem.
she's on my pod next week. She's the CEO of Abby.
We'll see you there.
The CEO of AbbVie, everybody.
Oh my god,
Well,
yeah,
I
I
mean,
saw that.
there's definitely I would say there's definitely a competence gap in the industry right now. But
Mhm.
like, do y'all know the history of like fraud in the industry, especially CRA roles? Have y'all heard this? Have y'all talked about this
I've
before?
heard
In the
stories of
CR
like
No.
CRAs going to jail and
Really?
What?
I
Well,
haven't.
I want to hear this.
I think it was ACRP did a podcast years ago where they talked about this, but I've firsthand experience with this. And basically, there's an underground industry that
oh yes, fraud. Yes.
fabricates
Yeah.
fabricates CRA CVs
Yep.
because CRAs make such good money. So they pay these people to fake these CVs, fake
Oh.
references, fake contact information. So if you go and check,
No,
they
they'll
turn out,
even
oh yeah,
do
they
the
work here,
interview.
yada yada
They'll
yada.
even
Yeah.
do the interview for them
So
Yeah.
I
when they're
will
on Zoom.
I will tell you. Okay, so I actually, on the
Wait.
side.
You can go to jail for this? Sorry, Ashley.
Yeah. So okay, so I consult on the side, and I'll sometimes have people, reach out to me and say, hey, I need help with this or that. And so I do. I kind of go over the resume with them and all that stuff, but I don't, write the resume because I feel like that has to be something tangible somebody does themselves. And I had one individual say, "Oh, you don't write it for me?" And I'm like, "No, I don't know your background in detail. That has to come from you. Like, I will screw it up for you if you don't do it." And he's like, "Yeah, well, why can't I just pay you to create one?" And I was just like, "You don't just create your resume. You know what I mean? You go through your background." They're like, "Yeah, well, I heard that, people just pay for it and you make one." I'm like, "What?" Like, no. I would have never done that before. And he's like, "Well, not you, but people." And I'm like, "Well, you need to go to those people because I do not do that." And that was the first time I had heard of that. And then they also asked about, do you do interviews for people? I'm like, what? It's like, how do you do that? You're on camera. Like, no, well, you don't have to. I'm like, no, 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 hard no. And I never knew that was an actual thing. And this was, I think, about a year and a half ago. 2 people approached me with that. I was like, yeah, no.
At one of the CROs I was at, there was a CRA who had left her computer unlocked, and a family member got on the computer and said, "This is so and so's family member. They are a fraud. They don't know anything about the industry. They don't know
Wow.
anything what they're doing.
Wow.
All this stuff." And then like, "Oh, that was my husband. He thought it was funny. Yada yada yada." It turns out it was all fake. CV was fake. Got a job. They were a CRA1,
Mhm.
entry level CRA, and didn't know anything about what they were doing. Skirted through the interview, were
Unbelievable.
hired on
So,
all the
Doug,
training and all that stuff.
I got a story. Well, I
And
mean, with
wait,
family
wait,
like
wait.
that, who needs
Wait.
friends?
Very believable. We had a student in our class, Dan, that she got fired for using whiteout.
Chris. Oh yeah, this one girl used whiteout at a SIV or at an IMV.
Yeah.
So she lied on her resume. Oh, we got tons of stories.
Oh
Yeah.
god.
This
She
is
lied.
the beauty of After Dark. Just,
I know.
just say that.
Check it out. She lied on her resume to get a CRA job. They took her because you're new. Our SOP is you go shadow a senior one.
Yep.
So at the site, the senior one gave her something to correct. she pulled out whiteout and started using it and got fired on the spot,
Yep. So
which
she
was
took our
actually good.
Yeah, that's
academy because she's
wow.
like, well, maybe I need to really learn this stuff.
Right. So then she took our academy. This almost sounds like a bad ad for our academy. No. Then she took our academy. But
Yeah.
check this. Through my YouTube, guys, this is unbelievable. Through my YouTube, people call. They always try to cut the line. Hey, I don't need the CRA Academy because I just have a gap in my resume. That's all I have is a gap. What happened was it's a gap. So I'm like, okay, let's talk. All right, I'm already hired. This person tell me I'm already CRA.
Wow.
This day, so we scheduled a Zoom on this date. I actually have an IMV. You want to do a Zoom that day? Because I'm having some issues with what I'm looking at. I say, okay, sure. I mean, let's fill in your gap, right? So then, day of IMV, I'm doing the Zoom with her. She's showing me like what she's looking at. It's a EDC, and then it's an I or a T. And I'm like, okay, so go click on the site because she has all these sites in front of her thing. So I'm like, which site are you at? Go click on it. And she doesn't know how to navigate the EDC. And then I say, okay, well, which side are you? Tell me the doctor's name. That's the one there. I'm like monitoring for her at this point. That's the one there. Click it. All right, go through the source data review. What's that? What patient? This person
Oh
had
my
no
god.
clue what they were doing in the middle of an IMV for a breast cancer study.
My
Oh.
gosh.
I told this lady, there's no way they assigned you 7 sites.
No.
There's no way you're lasting longer than a week. If I were you, I would resign today.
Yeah.
Just tell them something. You're done. Like there's no way you're gonna keep this up.
It's just
This
stress
is
is a
a.
killer. Yeah.
She was like, I see what you mean now with those videos about not lying on your resume. I'm like, what do you think they're gonna do if you tell them your 5 years experience? They're gonna put you on 7 sites. If they're paying you 90 grand, 100 grand, this was back in 2019, 2020. Now they're even more.
Yeah.
So they're out there. This Justin, you're absolutely right, man. They're out there.
At the academy, I do some of the intern classes and I'll get asked some really interesting questions. So what I started to do is I have like at least every other month I do like what I call hard class where I just hit them with all the heavy shit that they're going to deal with that is like the most stressful. So I go into detail and then one of the students actually reached out to me. She said, I'm really happy that you said that because I don't think this role's for me. And I'm like, I'm glad that you
Wow.
realize that, finish it and go for a CRC role, right? Because it's still going to be valid training. But if you are not ready for that intensity, you like go for it. But again, it's going to be a lot. I mean, I it was brutal for me the first 6 months. I just when I first started.
This
Um,
is why CRAs they get to be. This is how we started this show. Everyone's dreams to be a CRA until you become a CRA. Then you get stressed out and you want to be a site owner. That's usually the trajectory. And that is a whole nother topic in and of it. I mean, site owner, I think it's less stressful than being a CRA, but it's a different kind of stress because now you have financial stress. When you're a CRA, at least you don't have to worry about your bills, how
mhm.
you're going to pay your bills. When you're a site owner, you got to worry how I'm going to get studies, how I'm going to pay my bills, everything. You're worried about everything. I still think it's easier to be a site owner. I've done both.
It depends on the
Yeah.
type of person, Dan.
It
Sure.
does. It
Not
does.
everyone's entrepreneur. That's true.
I had an RN tell me not too long ago. She said, you know, uh, I really I like the idea of research so much. My current job, I just really hate that I'm having to document so much. And I stayed quiet for like at least 2 minutes. I said, what do you think a CRA does? Because honestly, that's all you do. It's like it's literally all you're doing. At least as a nurse, you direct with the patient, or communicate with the PI. Most of the time, like you communicate with the PI, but you're in a room or you're just, head face in your computer and documentation. I like, well, I mean, it pays better. I'm like, okay, well, if that's your focus, but just know you're gonna document like crazy. So Just be sure.
Rod Raphael says you worry about paying your employees. That you do. And you worry about, I'm worried 6 months from now. We're good now on my site. I'm worried 6 months from now. Will we get these last 2 studies that I want? Because that will continue the cash flow, or will we not? But as a CRA, you're worried about next week. How am I going to do this report? And then how I'm going to go to this site, and now we have a database lock. Different kind of stress. Alicia says, I do not understand why one would go through the trouble of lying in the resume. Just ask the CEO of AbbVie why. All right. They've got a lot of stock options to answer you with. And it will eventually show an individual is very incompetent. Yes. Again, CC AbbVie CEO.
Who
By
seems
the
to
way,
be
AbbVie,
actually very competent.
very
Yeah.
competent. And by the way, like, let's do a pod and then let's get some studies. AbbVie, we love you guys, man.
Yeah.
We got a question. Let's help this person out. Aishwarya. I'm a pharmacist back in my home country, so she's pharmacist by training. Did a post-grad diploma in project manager and other reporting system database development. How can I start my career as a coordinator? Oh, goodness. This is a lot of door knocking. This is one of the things where in education, we're trained X equals Y, or X plus this equals Y. If you do this, you will get this. And then when you get that, then you do this, and this is how you advance. But when you're starting out for yourself, whether it's a business or your own career in this case, it's not that simple. There is no real blueprint. We tried to break it down for you. You got to find small sites in your area and go to them and say, hey, you know what? I'm a pharmacist. Do you need help doing QA? Do you need help IP accountability? Do you need help? What do you guys need help with? Do that to 15 sites in your area. One of them may give you a chance, even if it's an internship, which will then turn into a career. Because if you're a pharmacist, chances are you're pretty qualified to be a CRC. But there is no real, like, go to school for 4 years and then you get this diploma, just like you did to become a pharmacist. That's not how it works here. You've got to take some risk, take some unconventional paths. What do you guys think about this?
Well, I'll tell you what I did. I Googled, I figured out how far I was willing to drive. I think it was like 30, 40 miles or something. And then I just Googled all the private and then public, something public, and then all the institutions, medical institutions, and the universities that did research. I got all the names down. I called all the managers, got their names specifically, and then I went on clintrial.gov, and I submitted, like you had mentioned before, Dan, a long time ago, and I think you do videos on that. And then after I did that, which was online, I went and I looked for them on LinkedIn. I added them. I sent my stuff to them there, and then I went in person. And I would leave my resume, and then I would talk to the secretaries in the front and say, "Hey, if I were to give my work for free and not paid, where do y'all need help in?" So I would get the intel from the secretaries, and then whenever I'd finally get a call back, I would say, "Hey, well, I heard that you need maybe help in this area. What if I did this for free for you? Take it off your back." So I like did everything I could to get my foot in the door, and within 2 weeks I got picked up with pay.
Yeah, you volunteered. I mean, that's the recipe. That's what it is. That Ashley just nailed it. A lot of door knocking, a lot of phone calling, dropping off, your resumes, small talk shop at the receptionist area, do community engagement, hang flyers, make phone calls, offer to do recruitment. And it's maybe it is unpaid, but it's invaluable experience because now you can add that to your resume. You make a connection at that clinic, that person now becomes a reference for you, whether it's paid or unpaid. It's relevant, it's experience. Yeah, that's absolutely what I would say as well. I think you nailed it.
The problem is you get educated people, a master's degree, in this case, pharmacist. They feel like maybe they don't have to do that because of their background.
Well, you know what, Dan? I did a long podcast with big shout out to James and Lucy
James
from Huxley
Fowl,
Martin. Yep, our
Huxley
buddy.
Martin.
I came from academia as well, and my first gig, my break into clinical research, I was in a cubicle as a project associate, and I was like, literally felt like I was in the movie Office Space. I couldn't believe I literally I was in depression. I'm like, how did anyone see my stapler? Like, literally, I was like, how did I end up here? I mean, I could not believe it.
You were in the basement looking for your
Yes.
stapler, huh?
They moved me literally, and I was just, but my point is, it was an ends to justify the means. So my point is, even with your degrees, PhDs, PharmDs, PsyDs, DHPs, MDs, whatever, you kind of have to just check that ego at the door and understand it's like a residency.
Mm-hmm.
Put 4 years, residents work 80 hours a week, make 60 to 70 grand tops in some therapeutic areas, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
It's a metric. I mean, and however, when you graduate and you finish your residency and fellowship and internship, you are now making a healthy, hefty salary, and it's similar. Obviously, it's not on the same scale as a full blown CRA, but you eventually become a 6-figure earner.
Mm-hmm.
And you think of just think of that checking, that ego at the door as your residency, and you kind of have to pay your dues to get to where you want to go. And unfortunately, Dan, and to your point, just because you have those credentials and those, degrees, it's not going to sidestep you. It's just not.
Yeah, I had the experience where in order to get that job, I had to be willing to do the night shift. I wouldn't leave till 1 a.m. and that's that I would start school sometimes at 7:30 in the morning. So there'd be days where I wouldn't see the sun at all because I would get out at 5:30, maybe see it for like 30 minutes, get to work and leave till 1 a.m. And then what was even worse about that was, I had to, the part where, checking my ego because, if you're there at the night shift, there was no custodians or janitors. So there was times where I was cleaning up, like literally like a custodian. And I remember very distinctly, like, always having to talk myself through that every night because, it felt really degrading sometimes because of
Yeah.
all the schooling and everything I'd done. But I kept telling myself, no, I'm gonna, this is just a means to the end. This is that step up. And so I tell people that all the time. You're gonna have to suck it up sometimes because, if you could be at this level as a professor and you want to get into research, you're gonna have to start at the bottom. That's just how it is. And if you're willing to do that and understand that that's only for a little while, you'll get far.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
it's the old adage. There's a lot of jobs I'm overqualified for, but none that I'm better than.
I like
There you
that.
go.
That's true. And site owner is the ultimate. I mean, ultimately, you're working for your employees and not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
Once you find the team that you want to keep, you find yourself working for them. Yeah, check your ego at the door. I think there's a lot of mindset stuff that we can take away from this Guru Nation After Dark. Closing remarks or thoughts from.
How often are y'all doing this?
So far, it's once a month. X is going crazy right now.
Really?
There's 55 people on X.
Robert
That's
got
it,
it
we need-
right. Good
I
job,
told you we
Robert.
were gonna break it.
Shout out to that's just X. LinkedIn, we were up to like now we're at 12, but we were up in the 20s at one point.
Really? Well, that means you should do it more than once a month. You should be doing it twice. As long as I
Ashley,
know in advance, I'll come.
But do you know who started Guru Nation After Dark?
Who started Guru Nation after
Take
that?
one guess.
Sebastian.
It was Sebastian. It was Sebastian.
This guy.
That guy.
It's not a bad idea. When Robert told me this idea, I'm like, no one's gonna watch.
He's
man.
like,
People are
get
asleep."
out of here! Come on. He's like, I'm like, Dan. Everybody's stressed out. They're searching LinkedIn.
I
There's a
mean, if
thousand-
I
there's
honestly
a
would have
thousand
known, I would've
thousand
got it right.
applicants per job. Like, I mean, everybody's on right now. Let's go. And it was a heck of a turnout. It was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, well, let me know in advance, Dan and Chris, and I'll
Sure. Yeah, we'll
have
do
a
it. We'll
drink
start
or
doing.
something.
We'll have all the LICR girls come on, and we'll do a SOS recreation of SOS, and we got some interesting things to tell you guys off air too.
Ooh,
Um,
okay.
but closing remarks, let's go around. Chris, what do you think about Guru Nation After Dark? Questions, comments, complaints, thoughts?
Well, I'm going to be very unoriginal. I have nothing.
Nothing.
But it's fun. I mean, it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
enjoyable than 6 in the morning, Dan.
I can go both though. We go
Yeah, I
sun
don't
up to
even know how you
sundown.
guys do that. It's like 8 a.m. my time when you guys are on. I'm like,
This
fuck.
is our second pod of the day here.
I actually was listening in on y'all's first one.
Yeah, that's
Actually, there's some days we don't see the sun. It's just this light
right.
in front right here. That's it. All right,
Yeah.
Robert. Questions, complaints, thoughts, jabs for either Chris or Justin or anything.
No, I'm not gonna jab or complain. I love Nation. I love Guru Nation After Dark. I think it's amazing. If you ever want our playlist that is curated by Dan
Ooh.
and myself, send us a message. Connect with us on LinkedIn. We have a proprietary playlist that
Got some good
requires you to be 21 or older. This is my theme song.
That's the good one.
Certainly, like honestly though, big shout out to everybody who does join in on these conversations and makes it interactive. It's super fun. And even though we do mess around, I think there is a lot of good advice that came out of this particular episode. So connect with us and we'll help you in any way we possibly can. And Dan, big shout out to you for facilitating this. So thanks for having me.
Y'all need to do a Spotify channel.
Thank you.
A Spotify channel. Everybody
Spotify.
has to have their own created
We'll have
album.
a site owner playlist, a stressed out CRA playlist, a database lock, a paying your employees playlist,
a back at the hotel after monitoring all day workout playlist.
Yes. Justin, I know you've been on the pod before. I gotta have you on again, man. We gotta go deep into like some of your career. Let's do that soon. What are your closing thoughts, remarks, state of the industry as you see it currently?
I don't know that you have time for that.
We got time.
State of the industry. It's been better.
Hey, mic drop. That's enough. Right there.
That's done. It's been better. Wow, that is a mic drop.
That's nothing more to be said.
That's the outro music right there. That's all we need for after that one. All right.
Really good.
We'll do a podcast, Justin, on the state of the union for the industry.
That's good.
Because I feel like there's a lot there. Anything else though, really quick?
Yeah, I mean, this was great. It was a really candid discussion about where things are. I would love to get into some conspiracy theories about pharmaceutical industry in general. I think that would be a fun episode.
I've already been in YouTube jail not once but twice. One more. They already told me one more. I'm done. Permanent ban. Permanent.
Oh,
but we'll go on next. We'll go on next. We'll go on LinkedIn. Yeah, we'll start a new channel with Chris.
Yeah, let him get banned.
Yeah. Well, he could take some strikes. He has none. Oh no, we do have some.
We
strikes.
got one. We got one.
Really?
Man, we're bad. We've been misbehaving. All right, and then Ashley, Margot, thoughts, state of the industry, comments.
I agree, and that's that I haven't even been in as long as you guys. You guys are awesome. What I would say to those who are listening, for somebody that does have experience and that is at sponsor level but is still constantly learning, I highly recommend for you to tune in to as many podcasts as possible. I learn every day from hearing y'all's conversations. And if you don't have the opportunity to get direct mentorship, this is virtual mentoring. You get to hear exactly what's happening, hear it straight from the horse's mouth, right? So tune in always. If not, go back and rewatch and like it.
Very good comment.
Go connect with all these. Yeah, thank you, Ashley. Everybody hang on a little bit, and then X, thank you very much. LinkedIn, thank you. Facebook, thank you. YouTube, if you're watching this or you're listening on Spotify or something, thank you. Like, subscribe, comment, share, go follow all these people. Their LinkedIns are underneath, except Chris. Bye-bye.